Hi everybody, it's Katrina from the Bead Mat and the Alluring Bead Boutique, and I'm finally getting around to doing the long-awaited video on making some bald head pins. And I'm just going to let you know right up front that the only angle I can film from is up to down at this time. So I'm just going to show you quickly how I go about this little technique. It's really simple. Not hard at all to do. Let's talk about the wire. I'm going to use some 22 gauge just copper wire here because it's cheap and I got a lot of it. Now, to determine how long you want to cut this wire, you first would need to know what you're going to be using your bald head pin for. So in a couple of examples I've shown you previously, I like using them for ear wires. So in order to use them for ear wires, I usually cut my piece of wire about 2 1/4 inches long. And that's so that I have enough on the end to make a ball. And then I have a couple of inches left over of regular wire to shape into an ear wire. But I usually use 20 gauge for wire to do the ear wires with. So in this example, I'm just going to be making some that I'm going to use for head pins because I'm using this thinner gauge wire, which is 22. Now, if you wanted to make a wire wrapped loop on the other end of your head pin, you're going to need to leave yourself enough length in order to make your loop and to have some wrapping wire left. But I'm just going to pretend that I'm making head pins, that I'm just going to make a simple loop on the end. So I'm going to go ahead and cut mine at about 2 1/2 inches long. And I'm just going to take my flush cutter and I'm going to snip. Lay that one down. And then I'm just going to cut another one. And then because something can usually always does go wrong, I'm just going to cut a couple of more. And that way, if you're going to make head pins, you would probably want to make several at a time. So you're kind of like working in production mode. So I went ahead and I've cut 4 wires at 2 1/2 inches long. And so when I did my little introduction to my at-home solder setup, I introduced you guys to this little third-hand base and these locking tweezers. And for holding on to my metal while I ball up the ends, I'm going to go ahead and use these little locking tweezers. I'm going to open it up by pinching here, put my wire in, and then let go. And it's locked into place like that. You don't have to worry about straightening your wires or anything at this point because you would do all of that, finishing work later on. So I'm going to be using my little blazer torch for today's quick little example on how to make the bald head pins. And I went ahead and make sure that I've got a full, filled my torch up with my butane before I start. I've got some rulers here that I'm going to get out of my way because I used those to cut my metal and now I don't need them. I've got my little pot of cool water to quench back over here on my desk. Let me just get this camera up and I'll show you. I've got my pickle pot and it is on, and my pickle is warm and ready to use. I've got my little copper tongs here to get things in and out of my pickle with. And so now basically all I need to do is fire up my torch. And I've got my camera up as high as it can go. So I'm going to be working, just a little bit strangely because like I said, I've got to put this camera somewhere because I need both of my hands. So go ahead and take the lid off of my pickle pot. And now to make these bald head pins, you don't need any flux and you don't need any solder. You just need something to hold your wire with. You need a surface to hold your wire over that is non-combustible. You need your fire extinguisher close by because you're working with your torch. And you need your safety glasses on, which I have mine on. So now I've got my wires cut. And I'm just going to lay these 3 over here while I work with this one. And now I'm going to turn on my torch. So I'm going to cock it. And then I'm going to start it. And I'm going to lock my flame. And then I'm just going to set it down like into my little work pan that I showed you guys before, and I'm going to let it just kind of hang out there, but I'm holding it with my hand. So now we see the blue tip of the cone of flame right there, and that's the sweet spot that we want to hit. So I've got my wire onto my tweezers here, and I'm just going to bring my wire down into that little cone right there. And then I'm just going to hold it there until this metal starts to ball up in a little ball. This is a little bit of a weird angle for me, but just give it a little bit of time and it will eventually ball up. Let me try a different approach here. It shouldn't take too awful long for it to start happening. There it goes. Now it's starting to roll up into a little ball. And as soon as it gets to the size that you want it to be, all you do is remove it from the flame, turn the torch off, and then let me get some light here so you can see how I have that little ball right there on the end of my head pin. Now I can make it bigger just by simply turning the torch back on and putting it back in. Lock my flame. I'm going to try to steady my hand here a little bit, and we're going to get right back to the tip of that blue flame and just let it keep growing, and it'll grow up and get bigger and bigger. Just like that. And then when it gets to the size you want, you just dip it in your cool water, and then you drop it into your pickle pot. Let's do another one. So my tweezers are probably still pretty hot, so I don't want to touch those. I'm just going to get my tweezers back, open them by squeezing down here, grab my little wire, then I will turn my torch back on, lock my flame, and then I was going to hold my wire straight up and down and drop it down to the tip of that blue cone where it's the hottest. You know, it's going to keep going, keep holding it there until my little ball starts to form. You want to make sure you're over something, you know, like your fire brick, because you don't, you know, if that little end were to melt off, you don't want it to drip onto your desk or your leg or anything like that. So that one's got a pretty good ball on it. So I'm going to go ahead and quench it, put it in the pickle. I'm going to turn my torch away from myself here and grab my next piece of wire. Just a little bit more like that. And then you be really careful with manipulating other things while you're holding your torch and it's lit. So I'm going to come in to that blue cone right at the point and let it get really nice and hot. And then we'll make it start forming the little ball. And this is another really good practice for figuring out where that sweet spot of your flame is, because if you're not in the right place, it'll take a lot longer for your ball to start forming. Which my light is making it a little difficult for me to actually see where I need to be here, but I'm patient. There it goes. Now it's starting to ball up. And up it comes. It starts climbing up. And there we go. Quench it. Pickle pot. One more. And then we will stop on this little project. So I'm just grabbing my wire. Getting into the sweet spot of my flame. Watching for my little ball to come forming and rolling up the wire. Patience is a virtue when you're soldering. You don't want to melt your wire. And here it goes. It's starting to ball up now. And climb up the little wire. My hands are a little shaky because, as if you guys are used to me, you already know I have shaky hands, but anyway, this one's being a little bit more difficult and not trying to ball up as quickly. But I've had my torch on for several minutes, so I could have a little something to do with it. There we go. Now we're starting to get it. Nice little ball. Alright. So I'll quench that one and drop it in and turn off my torch. And now that I'm done, I'm going to put my torch back on its little stand. And I didn't record any of that, did I? Yeah, oh yeah, I did. Whoops. So I got myself a little paper towel out here, and I made myself a pretty strong batch of pickle recently, but so I was able to get these two out pretty quick. These are the first two I made. But anyhow, so there's my little ball head pins, and they're nice and soft because of that, all that heat anneals that metal down real super soft. So now all I would need to do is get out some really fine grit sandpaper and polish those up a little bit. And I can use them for whatever project I want to, as head pins or whatever. And you can use any gauge wire that you like to make bald head pins with. You just, the thicker the wire, the more time you would have to spend in the flame. So that one's got a little bit of a piece on it right there. So I would probably have to take a file and knock that little tip of metal off right there before I started sanding with my sandpaper to polish that one up. But I also saw recently a cool video where this fella had made some bald head pins using like 20 gauge wire, and then he paddled them out till they were a little flat, like a little disc on the end, and he soldered them onto a base wire and folded those little discs over the top for his prong settings, and it came out really cute, and it would look really nice in an organic or, ornate, more ornate type of a setting than this prong setting. But it was a really cute idea, so I thought I'd share that with you. But anyhow, guys, that's pretty much all there is to making your own bald head pins that you can use to make ear wires. You can use to as a decorative finish on like a ring, like I showed you guys in a previous video where I made that little pendant, and I had just wrapped bald head pin wires all around my little circular component. And I just wanted to fish this one out and show you guys a quick reminder of how I had decoratively edged this little round ring that I soldered together. Here's this component I showed you in the other video. So I could potentially use these and just start wire wrapping this wire, leaving the little head pin poking out wherever I wanted my little ball to position itself as a decorative trim. So there you go, guys. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click like and subscribe to my channel. Head on over to the Bead Mat website and get signed up for my newsletter over there. All right, folks, that's it. You have a great day, and thanks for watching.